How rich can a person truly become? A millionaire? A billionaire? What if their wealth was so vast that it could influence the economies of entire regions simply by passing through them? There was such a person in history. His name was Mansa Musa. And according to many historians, he was the richest individual who ever lived. But the remarkable thing is not the size of his fortune. It is the impact that fortune had on the world around him. Because Mansa Musa was not merely a wealthy ruler. The amount of gold he possessed was so immense that it altered prices in the cities he visited. And his story reveals far more about wealth, money, and economic power than most people realize. Our story begins in 14th century West Africa, in the region we now know as Mali. At a time when much of Europe was still struggling with economic hardship, an extraordinarily wealthy empire was rising in the western part of Africa, the Mali Empire. This was no ordinary state. It controlled some of the largest gold reserves in the world. In fact, many historians believe that a significant portion of the world's gold supply at the time came from Mali's lands. And at the center of that wealth stood Mansa Musa. He became ruler in 1312. But what made him famous was not simply his position as king. It was a journey he undertook in 1324, a pilgrimage. Determined to travel to Mecca, Mansa Musa assembled one of the most magnificent caravans in history. Thousands of soldiers, thousands of servants, hundreds of camels, and tons of gold. Although historical sources differ on the exact numbers, one thing is certain. People of the time had never witnessed such wealth. As the caravan moved across Africa and the Middle East, it attracted attention everywhere it went. But the most fascinating chapter of the journey unfolded in Egypt. When Mansa Musa arrived in Cairo, he distributed so much gold that the local supply suddenly increased. He gave gifts to the people, paid merchants generously, helped the poor. And then something unexpected happened. The value of gold fell. Today, we would call it inflation. The wealth of a single individual had influenced the economy of an entire region, and the effects lasted for years. Some historians suggest that the decline in the value of gold in Cairo could still be felt nearly a decade later. It sounds almost unbelievable. Yet it illustrates a powerful economic truth. No matter how valuable something may be, if its supply increases dramatically, its value can decline, even gold. And perhaps that is the most fascinating aspect of Mansa Musa's story. Because this is not merely a story about wealth, it is a story about the nature of money itself. Mansa Musa's fortune was so enormous that simply spending it created economic consequences. Today we debate money supply. We discuss inflation. We analyze liquidity. Yet nearly 700 years ago, a single ruler unintentionally demonstrated many of the same principles. But wealth does not always translate into lasting power. The Mali Empire was extraordinarily rich, yet over the centuries that power faded. Trade routes changed, political realities shifted, and one of the wealthiest empires in history gradually disappeared from the world stage. That, too, offers an important lesson. Wealth is not permanent. Economic dominance is not permanent, just like empires themselves. Throughout history, people have assumed that power would last forever. But as we saw in the story of Rome, and as we now see in the story of the Mali Empire, no system lasts forever. Perhaps that is why the story of Mansa Musa continues to fascinate people today. Because what people truly wonder is not simply how rich he was. It is why even a fortune of that magnitude could not endure forever. And perhaps the greatest fortune in history reminds us of a very simple truth. Wealth matters. But the systems that create wealth matter even more, because fortunes can disappear. Gold can change hands. Empires can fall. Yet history continues to ask the same question. Is true power what you possess? Or is it your ability to sustain it? If this video gave you a new perspective, don't forget to subscribe. Because here at the Financial Memory, we'll continue exploring the stories where finance and history intersect, and sometimes we'll discover that even the greatest fortunes in history can teach us far more about money than we ever expected.